Welcome to episode 561 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Tim Hilton. He's Rafa Aldamuy. And I know I had the 5 headlines yesterday, and you'd think, there's nothing more to talk about. It was a 1-1 match, whatever. But yeah, there actually are a bunch of other topics to get into. So I wanted to bring on Rafa so we could really break some of this stuff down, because I'm checking my own biases and realizing I've been maybe a little biased from some of the things yesterday. So he's here to set the record straight. Ready to go, Rafa?
I was born ready, so let's go.
Well, I'm going to start in a place that I don't think that you wouldn't expect me to start with, and that is with the fact that the comments and the people have spoken, and they've spoken a lot about Pedri. And it seemed like more people were disappointed in Pedri post-game than I would have originally noticed or taken attention to or even drawn attention to. I felt like I had praised Gundogan and I had praised De Jong, and I thought that they were above average. And the fact that Barca were the better team yesterday, which I think we're just all admitting, especially for the first 30 minutes, that Barca were on the front foot. And we'll get into the whole idea of a big picture missed opportunity, sure. But if we're all at least safely able to agree that Barca weren't amazing, but they also were probably the better team in that tie, I had praised the other two midfielders, and I had said that Pedri was there. He picked up an assist and all that stuff. But going back even a few weeks, I had put him in the same category as Ronald Araujo when it came to transfer business. I had said that, Lamine Yamal, completely untouchable. But I had said that Araujo and Pedri were, I think, they were the two in that category of, if you get an outrageous offer, if somebody says 100 mil, Pedri, take it or leave it, because of their injury history, you take it. Or at least you definitely listen and say, all right, what are we going to do with this? I do still feel that way about both of them, that if a huge offer comes in, you listen to it, you engage it and see what's happening, even though they both have multiple years left on the deal, with Araujo likely discussing a renewal. But maybe I'm just a knee-jerk reaction after yesterday, or maybe it's even the last few months. It does feel like, to me, Araujo, even through all of his struggles and this dip in form that he's had that we saw the best of yesterday, they're in slightly different tiers of that sentiment, that the number for Araujo must be higher than the number from Pedri. And I think I can understand that, where it's like, it's so hard because I spent all summer saying Pedri is completely irreplaceable in this team. The numbers backed it up. But this year, the numbers back up that De Jong and Xavi are completely irreplaceable, and that Pedri has kind of not done the thing that he did last season to the same impact, because Gundogan has, one, taken some of that production, and B, he just hasn't been as magical as he has been in the past. And am I being too easy on Pedri, or does he deserve more criticism than I give him?
It's a really tricky question, because I think, and again, I'll say the disclaimer, I loved him as a player, but as a coach, it's just, for me, it's hard to judge players this season for me because of our coach, because of Xavi, because everybody seems worse than what, in my opinion, for the most part, they are. So although I can agree with that sentiment in a way, that Betty didn't have an amazing game, and then I mean, you brought a great point. Like, Gundogan now is taking a little bit of that pressure, but also that production as well. But with Pedri, it's a matter of, I just think, sadly, I know you were talking about Pedri, but I think the main problem is not Pedri, it's Xavi, that for whatever reason, obviously I'm not gonna get into that again, but for whatever reason, whether his message, he's not getting it across the players aren't able to execute what he wants, whatever that may be, everybody seems worse than what they really are. So Pedri not having an amazing game versus Napoli, yeah, whatever. It could be. I'm not saying that. I'm not totally against that, but at the same time, to take that into that conversation of, hey, if we get a 100 million euro offer for Pedri or Araujo, I think we do definitely listen to it. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's Xavi's not going to be here next season. We know that. We don't know yet who the next coach is going to be. There's a bunch of different names. Nobody has any information about what's going to happen. So in that aspect, I think the jury is still out. Like, Pedri, sadly, since that first season, that he got trashed with minutes with Koeman as a Barcelona coach. Then he went to the Euros with Luis Enrique. And after that, to me, this was like De La Fuente should have gone to jail and everybody in the Spanish Federation, because taking Pedri to the Olympic Games, that was just malpractice. After that, each season, Pedri has missed a chunk of like different parts of the season that for such a young player, it's so difficult for trying to like get that, not rust off, but trying to like even find yourself within the squad that constantly changes with all the signings and whatnot. And apart from the first season, each season has been cut short, cut short, cut short. And then Pedri like comes back for a month, 2 months, gets injured again. It's and then on top of that, you add the fact that the team isn't playing well, like hasn't played well the entire season. You could even argue that last season, for the most part, we didn't play well, like beautiful football and whatnot. So going back to Pedri, I mean, don't get me wrong. If 100 or 130 million off comes in, you definitely take a look at it. But I would hold until like it's more of a constant. Like you're like, okay, let's say De Serbi comes in next year, Hansi Flick, and you see the same pattern even with a different coach, then I might be a little bit more inclined to be like, I know it's gonna hurt, but I wouldn't be so against maybe seeing Pedri leave if we get that sum in an offer.
So I have two big fears about Pedri. And one is, of course, related to the injury stuff, that maybe already at his age, he's not trusting his body anymore the way he needs to because of that stop and start to that rhythm thing that you're saying. And then my second great fear is, as you mentioned, the best version of Pedri that we have seen was what Messi brought out of him. And my fear is that the best version of Pedri that exists was the player that is amplified by the greatest player of all time, right? And that Pedri is, let's say it was Messi was bringing more out of him than he actually was generating himself, if that makes any sense, right? So that's my other fear, that this Messi-less Pedri is who Pedri is, would be the other big concern. But then I look at the numbers from yesterday. People were talking about him getting dispossessed or having trouble or whatever, but as I even said tactically yesterday, Barca really had no left-wing option, because to stay with Kvara, Cancelo, to his credit, had to stay farther, deeper. He could not get forward as often as he does in the Liga. And that meant that in transition, and why I praised Lewandowski actually yesterday too for the same reason. I thought Lewandowski did, while he could have held the ball greater at times, he didn't have any outlet to his left. So every time they were able to turn him to his right, because that was where Gundogan was coming from, or there was Lamine Yamal, who instead of staying wide also kept drifting in to looking for balls to feet, which means that Lamine Yamal usually throughout the game was not getting in behind. I mean, he's asking for the ball to feet because getting him in a 1v1 situation is the most dangerous thing that Barcelona can do. So it all makes sense in a vacuum when you have Christensen as your defensive midfielder. But without Pedri then to his left or making those runs consistently because he's in the midfield to try to get the best out of him, now you have no outlet to the left. So I felt like Pedri, very much like Gavi, it's the same thing. I'm not making an excuse for him on the left wing, but ideally, Barcelona just has a pivot that can just be a pivot, or again, up top would be Gavi instead in that four-man midfield. And then you have a problem with Pedri, or, again, that's a problem that Pedri, De Jong, Gundogan, and Gavi, in a best case scenario, Barcelona's four midfielders, none of them is the pivot that Barcelona truly needs. That's a bigger discussion for another time. But just looking at stats from yesterday, aside from his assist, he had 57 touches. Gundogan only had 59. And Pedri, again, was even being asked to defend and play out on the wing. And Gundogan was in the center channel. He had 36 passes, which you would actually expect he would have higher than that. He had 57 touches total, but between 40 passes, you'd like to see that. But again, 36, what are we talking about? 2 chances created, 2 tackles, 5 passes in the final third, 9 ball recoveries, where he was 5-8 on his duels, and he was only actually dispossessed once in the game. I know it felt like he wasn't, making the most of his opportunities, but those stats don't tell me a player that really struggled in that game. That tells me that he was part of a midfield cog that was on the front foot along with De Jong and Gundogan. I thought the midfield was better. The back line, other than the Inigo Martinez mistake, which we can now talk about whether that was a mistake or a foul. I'm not going to move off, from where I said yesterday. I think that he tried to step And I think he lost his balance a little bit, went down a little too easily. But I also thought Osimhen, pushed out where it's like if they called the foul on Osimhen, then it's fine. And then because they didn't, they weren't going to, if that makes sense. Like they weren't going to overturn that. So that's how that was. So I'll let you jump in there. But yeah, so my final point on Pedri is that, again, I look at these stats and I'll tell you when he plays bad, but I don't think he played poorly yesterday. I think if Barcelona finishes their chances, even the one in the 96th minute with Gundogan, if that goes in and Barca win 2-1, I don't think a person in my comments criticized. Well, there's like 2 or 3 that are always going to criticize Pedri. I've got some haters, so shout out to you 3. But other than those 3, I don't think, like, we'll say the masses would have been criticizing Pedri.
I want to get this off my chest. I despise playing with a false left winger.
Mm-hmm.
I despised it when Guardiola did it and put Iniesta there because of what exactly you said. When we get the ball back, where like Lewandowski turns around back in the day, it was Messi. Messi couldn't give anybody that diagonal pass. Obviously, if Jordi Alba came up, yeah, but there was a big gap there that just shrinks the field for you, because if Cancelo doesn't come up, then literally there's no outlet on the left wing, and the opposing team knows that, so they're able to, like, we're not going to even worry because nobody is there. Nobody is going to even arrive to the area, so we're able to overload Lamin's side, because that's the problem that we're going to have on their right wing, because nobody's on the left wing. And then that's why I was for years begging, we need a left winger. And then lo and behold, someone named Neymar arrived, and look at that, a world star left winger for Messi to lay passes to. And I think that made a big of a difference those years. So I'll say the same thing. It's no wonder that we're reading on the press, hey, Barcelona, one of the things they're looking for, apart from that obvious defensive midfielder, is a really good left winger. I know even Kvaratskhelia has been named, obviously rumors and whatnot, but yeah, I just wanted to get off my chest whether it's Xavi, Pedri. To me, that's just, I don't like it. Then the other thing, yes, I think it's a mixture, because that always happens. Like, people, I know this is not possible, but for when people, us, whoever that may be, we analyze the games, I think it's take out the score and then look at how the game was played without the goals. I know that's easier said than done, because what you said, like, I don't think we played an entire amazing game, but the first 30 minutes were really, really good. And we had, 2, 3 really, really good goal scoring opportunities. If we put those away, of course, it's a different eliminatoria.
Some of the best football that they've played all season.
They did. Maybe. But my problem is, and then obviously I'll just say this, I get this feeling, I don't know if you get it or the audience and whatnot, especially this season, I'm referring to this season, that when teams want to drop back against us and give us the ball, they do it. But as soon as they're like, hey, your time's up, we're going to press high up, we're going to make it uncomfortable for you to play out of the back, and then it's like when they want to and they decide to press higher up, we can't do anything about it. And in a way, it felt like that after Lewandowski's goal, that they were like a little bit like Atletico Madrid, that they can attack. They're really good at that. But Simeone is like, he always goes back to what's comfortable. So they just defend. And when, especially against us, when we score the first goal, you see it instantly. They're like, oh, Barcelona scored the first goal. Now we got to attack. And they do it really well and create a bunch of chances. So it felt like that with Napoli in a way, that we scored and then they were like, okay, we got to attack. And then they did. And we were able to do anything against that. And it's been the same pattern for the most part the entire season, whether it's relegation teams, mid-table teams, top of the table. Like, it doesn't matter who it is against. When they want to press up higher up against us, Xavi hasn't been able to, for whatever reason. I'm not a coach.
I got to throw at you. Actually, I like that you went into this conversation because this is where we're going next with this. Because to your point about how well they played, well, last thing I want to say about Pedri real quick is that he does not have the instincts to shoot. And I'm not saying blaming Pedri for that, but that's a systemic issue about having him play as that false left winger, that he's not in shooting positions because he doesn't put himself in shooting positions. He had one giveaway in the first half, I believe, that led to a little bit of a Napoli like mini counter because he went to like toe poke the ball in a non-shooting position and it collapsed right into a Napoli wall that was moving out on the counter. And it was just one of those other examples where his body is not oriented when he's going towards the box to shoot. He's not looking to do that. He's looking to set somebody up. And when you're going to play him at left wing, again, that means there is no threat coming from that side. So that means they're able to square, the defenders are able to know that Lewandowski, Lamine Yamal, and Gundogan, those are the three. I mean, really, those are the three players that are going to get a boot off other than a corner where you might see a Rafa or Koundé. But yes, in open play, it's Lewandowski, it's Lamine Yamal, and it's Gundogan in that setup. That's it. Really, that's it. Unless they've really put numbers in the box and there's a ton of runners, and then Pedri get the tap in or whatever, the few goals that way. But to your point about playing well too, I mean, the stat I read in the first half about Barcelona had not allowed a single shot from the opponent in the first half of a Champions League match for the first time since December of 2016 versus Borussia Mönchengladbach. And it was the first time in a knockout game since May 2011 versus Real Madrid. And if you go that kind of stat tells you just how well they played in the first half. If you don't allow a single shot, that means you have done something right. You have figured out your opponent. You've really knocked the ball out of the park, right? Defensively, you figured it all out. And Araujo was playing great. Koundé was playing great. Things were working, and they played well enough where you'd say, again, I throw that stat at you, and you say that team probably won the match, or they should have, because you don't play that well in the first half, and then you're right, like get punched in the mouth and not be able to cover. And so now transitioning into the why and trying to figure that out and do that. One is that Calzona, I mean, no manager can fix the team after 45 minutes, but he had 45 minutes with his team and kind of, I guess, figured it out. And I had said they came out so flat. They were given, I don't think, any instructions, which isn't his fault. Calzona's like, he didn't know. He just said, all right, I picked my 11. I hear some of the ideas because they had worked with them before, many of them, and not all of them. I think there was 7 or 8 that had crossed over with him in the past under Spalletti. So there wasn't a lot of synergy, and they also play a very similar way. It's a 4-4-2 press defensively, 4-5-1, and Guisa dropping in, and then in a 4-3-3 they attack. That is the way Napoli played. That's the way they played now for quite a few years. It's kind of the system that they work with, and it's a broader idea of Spalletti and what you see with a bunch of Italian teams. That is a hybrid of the Calcio or Calcio. So
Catenaccio.
Yeah, Catenaccio. Sorry. My apologies, everyone, especially my Italian. So now we're trying to diagnose and say, well, why? Like, other than Calzona saying, work harder, stop being so flat like a pizza, like get out there and be a bit more intense. I say pizza because pizza was invented in Naples. Look it up. So flat like a pizza, go out there. Don't be flat, be exciting, get in the oven, rise up and be more. And they were much better, because to the point that everyone was saying, Barca wasn't being calm. I said on the 5 headlines, and I still repeat it. I don't think either of these teams building out of the back look confident enough this year. Like, they look like talented players who are unwavering in their confidence. And whenever you see any top team, look at Bayern Munich against Bayer Leverkusen. It's the same thing. Like, it's why Tuchel just announced his thing. Because even though on paper, like, why is a team that has Joshua Kimmich in it, or, why is he looking like he's not comfortable? Like, it's when things are breaking down, everything's breaking down. And we watched a match yesterday between two teams that it is breaking down for both of them. So I don't trust Barcelona, and I'm glad
it's basically the Spider-Man meme.
Exactly. Right. That is what we watched yesterday, which and so for all those neutrals who were complaining, like, I was like, well, Napoli does kind of stink. And anyone I've listened to Napoli stuff. I did my homework. I was like, yeah, this team kind of stinks, even though they won the league last year. And then we know Barcelona, like, yeah, they kind of play like they stink, even though they have all these talented players. And then, people who just show up for Europe are like, oh, what's the deal with Barcelona and Napoli? I'm like, no, this is who they are. That match yesterday was actually really indicative, as you mentioned, the Spider-Man meme of kind of what we come to expect. But you're right about Barca getting punched in the face. The thing that people really looked at is that Napoli made changes, and they also made early subs. He wasn't afraid to go to his bench and make some subs early. And I had said in the preview, Napoli, other than, as somebody pointed out, so shout out to whoever pointed out to me, that Zielinski had some weird contract stuff, so he was unavailable. But everybody else in their squad was actually healthy, and Osimhen was restricted to the 60 minutes because of coming back from AFCON. So other than 1 minute restriction for their striker who scored the goal, then came out of the game, everybody else was healthy. So Calzona, even though he was new, could look down his bench and say, all right, I know a bunch of you, or I can trust you. Let's change this game. As I said yesterday, I know that they're kids, and we've been very excited about the kids, Kubarsi and Mark Yu and Vitor Roque. And of course, the idea of all these players and the moments that they've had on the field, I've been very excited, exception of Vitor Roque's extended start, but they've been very exciting. But I mean, other than Fermin Lopez, and I know you can go off on the Fermin Lopez thing about how he probably should have came in the game for Pedri earlier in the game even. Pedri probably should have came out in like the 65th minute for Fermin Lopez. So other than that one argument, like, it was Rafinha in the 80th, and people are like, this guy stinks. Why is he on the field? And I'm like, well, you just yelled a shot for waiting the 80th minute, and then the guy you put in is the one right winger, and you're like, well, this guy stinks. Well, I mean, what do you want? You know what I mean? And then Order Romeu with hair and João Felix come in, and then again, you look down the bench, the only players left, and this guy's, and I mean, people are complaining like, well, Mark Hostodo could have come in for Frankie. I can throw, what are we doing? So it's just like, I don't know. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I think it was a loser situation for Xavi because he doesn't trust anybody on that bench because this squad as a total is just not trustworthy, have not been good enough. And if you think the players who he plays are out of form, try the guys who've been sitting on the bench for the last, 3-4 months, right? And I mean, yes, Mark, you did score that amazing goal last week, by the way. So shout out to him with the Golazo. Like, that was amazing. But again, that's in the third division. And for Kubarsi, too, I would argue that this game, starting Inigo Martinez, protected him. And, like, let's say if Kubarsi was the one who got pushed over by Osimhen, right? Like, what if you put him in that situation? So my gut tells me, I mean, I was wrong with my gut the first time, but my gut now tells me that Kubarsi is going to start at Mons week against Napoli. I think that now home cooking, that the kid's going to get the look.
Yeah, I agree. The problem with, I mean, you said it, like Bayern, to me, it's more often than not, it's the coach's fault because there's, like, with that squad, it's just too many talented players for them to out of nowhere seem like they suck, which they don't. The majority of them, they don't. Like, Araujo doesn't suck, Pedri doesn't suck. It's like, it's just like Frenkie doesn't suck. Whatever, I can go down the list.
Gundogan, not to say the name. Gundogan he has double-digit assists for the first time in his career. This is actually
exactly
some of the best Gundogan that we've seen. Yeah.
And then, like, and that's double-digit assist. Looking at our attack, like, imagine if he had a formidable attack, a left winger, a right winger, like not a 16-year-old who has been amazing. But the thing is, like, you see a little bit, like, it was. I talked to Julio about it. Shout out to Julio. It was such a dumb play in a way, but to me, it was like the perfect example of how Xavi hasn't been able to get this team to understand anything that in his mind, I'm pretty sure that he wants the team to do. But it was like Frenkie and Gundogan to his right. Gundogan was going to relay the ball back to Frenkie, but there was a Napoli player in the line of pass. So Frenkie just stood there like a scarecrow instead of, like, either going forward or going backward so he could open a passing lane for Gundogan. And you could see Gundogan's frustration because he was like with his face gesture, you could tell he was like, Frenkie, move. Like, I can't pass you the ball because there's a guy in between us. And Frenkie just stood there, and Gundogan just had to pass the ball back. There was another play, which, like, I know we praise Frenkie a lot, but for his ball progression, if there's one thing that he's really, really good at is literally taking the ball and, like Forrest Gump, just run. But there's a time and a place for everything, and there's a play that's been going viral on Twitter, which Frenkie grabbed the ball from almost the left side. And then they played a 1-2. He was driving the ball forward, and he could have passed that ball to Lamine since he was, like, literally like in the middle of the pitch. And Lamine would have had an entire one-on-one against Napoli's left back. I forget his name. And Frankie just waited. He just dribbled. And then when he eventually laid the ball to Lamine, like, Napoli's defense was quote-unquote already set up. And, like, Lamine couldn't do anything in a way. So he just, like, tried a lob pass and, like, couldn't do anything. But if Frankie would have delivered that ball, like, 4 seconds earlier, that would have been Lamine one-on-one on a counterattack. So
on that play, yeah, I was looking at that play. So on that play, what was interesting to me is those are those moments when I question Xavi and say, this situation was going to come up. Like, there were going to be situations where Frankie de Jong is driving forward, likely with a numerical advantage. You guys had to have talked about that at some point this season, right? So my question is, did Lamine Yamal, in theory, make the error by drifting inside as opposed to getting wide? Because that, I think, is what de Jong was looking for. But Lamine Yamal, to your point, I think was expecting the early ball. It never came. He drove instead. So my question is for Xavi, and this is why, again, I'm critical of Xavi in the moments when you can be, which in this case where somebody got their wires crossed, so I don't know who to blame, right? It was Young, was it Lamine Yamal? But because it's the end of February in a Champions League match, I go, that kind of miscommunication between arguably two of your best players. Like, and that's not arguable. Two of your best players on the field. That is unarguable. Two of your best players, that kind of miscommunication on a counter where you have a numerical 4-on-3, if it all goes your way, that tells me that I think there's this thing that Xavi is allowing them to play, and he's allowing them to kind of play through those moments. And I think this is actually a team that I know it feels like they should be living in chaos, because that's kind of what it was a lot of. I mean, part of Barca DNA, as crazy as it sounds, over the last 20 years has been put the ball at the feet of Ronaldinho or Rivaldo. Well, I'm not kidding. Rivaldo or Ronaldinho or Messi, put the ball on their feet and then kind of like that move around them, run for them, right? Like, work for them. And Lamine Yamal's not at that level. And I'm not saying he ever needs to be. I'm not putting that pressure on him. And you have to go about your system and your transfers and your managing and your coaching as if he won't be that thing, right? Unless like that you don't have a get out of jail free card on the wing or in the center of the field or giving him a free role. Because for 20 years and longer than that, going back to Kubala or whatever, like there was always a player that could just do the thing and make it happen. And, you know, again, you go back to the days of Maradona, like that's always been part of Barca, where they have these forward stars, usually from South America, that can just kind of solve problems for you in the attack, especially. And you don't have to kind of have specific instructions. And I think part of the Barca DNA is Xavi is still kind of saying, hey, you're world-class players. I trust you, but I don't know if it's not that the players can't be trusted, but I don't think there's enough of, you know, the game has evolved so much that look at Bayer Leverkusen. Like, even though Florian Wirtz has a free role, you can actually go back and see the moments when clearly the instructions of where to be in between those lines. Because once he receives the ball, that is where freedom begins. But if Lamine Yamal doesn't get the ball in a 1v1 situation, that is where freedom is. And there's no free moment because Barcelona aren't getting the ball to the players who can be free in those moments. You know what I mean? It's not getting it there.
That's my problem with Xavi, the coach, because, and I'm talking about this season and last season. Obviously, I'm not gonna count that half season that he came in because obviously, whatever. I'm gonna be just.
He turned it around pretty well too.
The two complete seasons that he's had, to me, I felt that it's like that. It's like give the ball to Dembele, the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And then let him break loose or break havoc, and then we'll benefit from the chaos that is Ousmane Dembele. When Pedri was available, let Pedri pull out his Harry Potter wand and do something magical. But the rest of the team, which in my opinion is Xavi's job, to then create a habitat around those differential players so that they're able to benefit, because everybody else who's not as differential as Dembele and Pedri in that season, they know what to do and they don't have to think. And that's the problem. This season, you can, obviously, Dembele's not here anymore. Pedri has been injured and whatnot. But what, from midfield onward, differential players do we have available? A 16-year-old on the right wing who we're relying on him to just, hey, Lamine, we know you're 16, but you're our most differential player in the squad. Do your magic, and then let's see what happens. So to me, that's why, to me, Xavi is not ready right now to be Barcelona's coach, because I'm expecting you to coach the entire team. I mean, the rest of the team, so that they're able to complement a guy like Lamine Yamal, because Lewandowski is of a certain age, is a striker that needs to be fed. Lewandowski is not going to go by. He didn't do it when he was in his prime. He's not going to do it now. He's not going to go by people and whatnot. If he gets the ball in the certain areas, he's going to be dangerous. But otherwise, he's not going to do anything different. Gundogan, the same thing. Like Gundogan, you get him the ball in certain areas, and he's going to be able to create danger. But apart from that, if like we don't have differential players, like a lot of them, it's like the same with Real Madrid. Like Ancelotti, in a way, has created a habitat so the other complement players who are really good are able to help his differential players, Bellingham and the forward, and then Vinicius. So I expect the same thing from Xavi. Like, teach Joao Cancelo. I know that's tough. Where to be, and then those, like, I know people might be listening to this, but like if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm expecting Xavi or whoever's the coach for you to, via the la pizarra, the whiteboard, to create advantages positionally, because it's no coincidence, and I've said it numerous times here, that this season, it doesn't matter if we're playing relegation teams, mid-table teams, top teams, teams that play with 4 at the back, 5 at the back, 4-3-3, 4-2-2, 5-4-1. It doesn't matter. It seems like every tactical approach from the opposing manager is able to cancel whatever we want to do. And you see the game, and there's no passing options. Like every time Pedri, Gundogan, Frenkie receive the ball, they don't got anywhere to pass the ball to. So you see Frenkie doing the same thing, just like trying to like shimmy, like going left, going right to get free, because there's no movement. Like nobody is free. And then then the opposing team, for whatever reason, with 2, 3, 4 passes, boom, they're able to bypass our entire pressure and then hit us on the counter. So it's just so frustrating.
I did think Barca's press was pretty good throughout the length of that game. I thought they pressed well as a team. They were in the right spots. That's why I did praise Lewandowski yesterday for that. I thought this was one of the better pressing games he had all year. And I want to say, too, this isn't a defense of Xavi, but Xavi has forgotten more about football than you and I could possibly ever know. He's stepping down for a reason, and I think the biggest reason why he's stepping down is funny to me that the Thierry Henry on the CBS sports show, that Thierry Henry's reaction to Xavi kind of went viral, right? Because he immediately said "Mister," and people were saying how if Thierry Henry is recognizing the greatness of Xavi as a football mind, people are taking him for granted. The irony of Thierry Henry doing that, and people know who've listened to me, right? That my Mount Rushmore of top 4 favorite players ever is Messi, Iniesta, Thierry Henry, and Xavi. Those are my 4 favorite players ever that I will watch forever. Those are those 4. And so the interesting thing about Thierry Henry, as you even know, I was so excited when he became a manager here in MLS locally, and I thought, oh, Thierry Henry coming to the U.S. Even when he played locally for Red Bulls, because I'm here in New York as well. So when he played for Red Bulls, and it was awesome, right? It was just like Thierry Henry, whatever. I got to see him at Red Bull Arena, which is a rough trip from where I am. But anyway, you get the point. I'm in the greater New York area. Nothing easy to get to in New York, but anyway. But Thierry Henry, as manager of Monaco, as a manager of Montreal Impact at the time, or CF Montreal. Was he at another place? Well, I know he was the assistant for Belgium at one of the World Cups, 2018.
He's a coach now, or was of some France's under, I don't know,
19 or 21.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So he's still figuring out, but his greatest issue with being a manager, and he was pretty honest about this, he was a manager, was taking the idea of a world-class player who just fully understands every second. He could break it down for you and say, well, this is my reaction to this. This is either instinct. This is not instinct. And his footballing mind, Thierry Henry, you could see it. I know he shaved his head, so you could almost see the thoughts pulsating. But like, it's like he's such a brilliant football mind, but he could never convey it to his teammates. His team. That was Thierry Henry's issue. And until he learned how to do that as a manager, and again, maybe he's gone back to the French youth national team to figure it out, and he'll jump back off TV right? But now he's on TV because he conveys his ideas well to us as a TV audience because he's a brilliant football mind. And he can watch a game and say, that's exactly what this team needs to do because that's who he is and that's what he sees. And he can diagnose it, but he couldn't get his team then to physically do the things he wanted them to do. And he was a little easier to diagnose with this because on the sideline, but Xavi's the same way. You see him looking at the camera. You see the way he's screaming at everybody. Like, you could see it with Xavi. And the reason I think he's stepping down more than any other, I hope he's honest about this, is that for the mind that he has, as I said, I was so excited because when you hear him explain his tactics, his ideas, his positional play, I think he is one of the best football minds in world football. I think he would have been the best darn assistant coach that anybody could have asked for at this point in his career. But I think that it was too early in his progression as a manager to know how to convey his ideas to his players. That is, I think, the only thing that I will say where the inexperience comes from. Because for people who say that he doesn't have the football ideas or his ideas are bad, whatever, like that's complete nonsense. Is that there is something that he has recognized that he has failed to do is take his really great ideas and have his team enacting those ideas, whether it's a lack of instruction, whether it's too much, like we don't know if he's not giving them instructions, giving them too much, or making it, you know what I mean? Like, we don't understand what that is. We have guesses, and here we are talking about those things, but like, it was just funny to me and ironic that people were like, oh, listen to Thierry Henry, stick up for Xavi. And I go, that's because they're the same, because they are some of the smartest and best players to ever play this game. And neither of them have figured out as managers how to convey their legendary status into the feet and boots of their team. And
that's the exact problem with Xavi. I agree with you 1000%. That, like, Xavi, of course, knows 100,000 times more than we do about football. Like, nobody's denying that. He's a incredible mind. Like, before he signed with Barcelona, we were seeing those YouTube masterclass videos, and on paper, we were like, this is gonna work out because of it. Xavi, he's from Barcelona. He's been at the club. He knows the ins and outs. He's a incredible football mind. But that's the analogy that I always make, and that's because it happened to me in college. I took this calculus class. It was with a Peruvian teacher, Punching. He's a brilliant mind in math and calculus and whatnot. But one thing is you knowing exactly each step, that even in your explanation, you bypass certain steps because you think everybody is supposed to know that. And I make the analogy, Xavi is like that college teacher that he's a genius in that class, whether it's math, science, whatever that may be. He is a genius, but he is not a great teacher. And that is the difference. Xavi could end up being a great teacher, and I think that is exactly what he is missing. For whatever reason, we do not know if he gives his players less information, more information. We do not know the exact reason, but it is obvious that for whatever reason that may be, he is not able to convey his genius.
It could even be that the personnel he has to work with, the squad he has to work with, does not fit his ideas.
Maybe, exactly.
Like, he might be like, what if he just truly needed a young pivot, right? Like, what if that was the thing he had needed, but because of the timing of the club, it never happened. And I think people say that coaches who ask for saying, or make excuses and say, I need this, I need this, I need this to enact my ideas, well, then they're just not good enough. Managers who are great managers can make the most out of everything, but it's like, I mean, Pep Guardiola went through a situation financially at Man City where it's not that he could do no wrong, but his problems were always going to be fixed by the squad. Like, he was never going to have like a bad squad. I mean, because he hasn't. Like, Pep Guardiola, even by whatever, like, he's never had a bad squad. He's always had some of the greatest players in world football at his disposal, and he is a great manager that befits the titles that they have won. So it's a perfect synergy there, right? And so like there are ebbs and flows, and managers rise and fall. We are like 40 minutes in. This is a complete diatribe. You brought up your old calc teacher, and you're getting a lot of shout outs. So I'm going to waste 2 minutes of everybody's time here. My high school calc teacher, this is unrelated football. My high school calc teacher, only C I ever got in college and in high school, whatever. High school calc teacher gives me a C. I had to go to tutoring. I thought I did not understand algebra. I thought my brain was broken. I just didn't understand. I was like, I'm bad at math. It doesn't work. I go to college and I get a 98 in college calculus, which is basically the same course except at a college level. So they do like less hands-on stuff. No tutor, just me just doing the work and doing it all. And I get a 98. And my high school calc teacher, wherever he is, I just want to let you know, I have not forgotten. It has been almost 20 years. Actually, it has been more than 20 years. I have not forgotten. You are still my Jose Mourinho. I still, whenever I have to do math and I do it quickly, I think of you. And that's what keeps me going when it comes to math.
Like real quick, like I just want to, because this is the analogy that I want people to take home from the whole Xavi thing. Imagine your teacher, the calculus teacher. He's telling you how to like do this or that, and there's 10 steps that you need to go from 1 to 10 in order to get this result.
Mm-hmm.
But since he's a brain, he thinks you already know steps 3 to 5 and then jumps from 2 to 6. And obviously, if you're not at that level, you get lost because you're like, wait, whoa, where did this X or Y come from? And I think that's Xavi's problem, that maybe he thinks everybody's gonna, especially different languages, people who weren't like we're in La Masia and whatnot, and then you can't pretend for everybody to, you can't assume that everybody's gonna see things exactly like you react. Maybe you're like, oh, Xavi, Pedri, oh, they should have done this in this situation. You're freaking Xavi. You're probably the best midfielder in history. You can't expect Xavi or Pedri or even Frenkie de Jong, like, because people say, oh, Xavi and Pedri are really young. Let's say Frenkie, who's at a perfect age. You can't expect Frenkie in that situation if you don't tell him to, by himself, think, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that, because Frenkie isn't Xavi and he isn't going to be. So, again, I think that's been Xavi's main problem. And again, I want to make this clear because I don't want people 5 years from now, if Xavi turns out to be an amazing coach, like we're talking about the Xavi of 2023 and 2024. And we're saying of course, there's room for growth. And if he gets that right, I still think he can be an amazing coach because he's an amazing football mind.
Yeah, you want this hot take? This is coming from nowhere. Hot take here. If
he'll be back.
Well, if over the summertime, Spain completely craps the bed at Euros, why not Xavi in 2026 to be Spanish national team manager?
Woof, Madrid media. Oh my god.
Well, I'm saying, like, you want the legacy Spain international hire, and not say the international game is easier, but guys seem to be able to take a break at the international level.
If you think the Madrid media were salivating for Luis Enrique to mess up, if Xavi becomes Spain's national coach,
I'm aware.
Multiply that by 100.
I'm aware. So yeah, and actually, I have another fun schooling anecdote that does have a point here. So Vitor Roque, people are asking why he wasn't subbed in yesterday's game, and my Vitor Roque story, to your comparison, to take that classroom thing another step. When I was in college, I took a honors to get my degree with honors. I took an honors course that was called 10 Things You Need to Know About Business, and in the parentheses, again, as people know, I was not a math and science in college. So in parentheses, it says like not a math class. It said like not an equation class, whatever. So me and my other communications or English, whatever friend, we decided to take this course with our other friend who's a business major. We're sitting there in the first day, and our teacher puts a bunch of equations on the board, and we're like, what is that? And our business friend is like, oh, that's just like easy company valuations. And we're like, that looks like nonsense to me. I've never seen that in my life. So then we go and we take the first like our friend helps us study. We tried our best. We stayed up all night and we take our first test. I got a 13% on that test. and my other friend got a 10%. And of course, the teacher calls us out the class and he goes, "Can I talk to you two?" And he goes, "What is your major?" And we were like, "Communications." But this is an honors course. We wanted to learn something about business because our school didn't allow you to be like a business minor with the communication major, which is a failing of the school. So like, we're like, all right, well, we couldn't double major. So can I take this, we just want to take this course because it said no math. And here you are. The whole test was equations, whatever. And he goes, "Yeah, I mean, that's what this is. Sorry that it was lied to you," because the rest of our class was all business majors. So we were graded. I'm getting to the point here about Vitor Roque. So we were graded on a curve, and we were graded on a curve together. So I know this does not say much about the American school system. So I apologize to everyone who saw the American school system or collegiate system. But yes, I was very much pampered because then our curve was against one another together. So if we studied together and did well enough together, so I ended that course with a 92%, and he ended with an 88, because based on what was set out for us, which was to do the reading, to understand the concepts, and to be able to put those into words like our word mouth jobs do. If we could articulate the ideas, then he was like, "Well, that's what you guys need to get out of this, because you're not doing company evaluations in your careers because you're not business majors, and this doesn't make any sense to you." And they all started way beyond. What that means is for Vitor Roque, why you didn't see him yesterday is the same thing. When I look at Vitor Roque this season, and I take his last start as well, when he was thrown out there and for the first time just didn't look comfortable because he didn't have a goal in 2 minutes on the field. But when he didn't look comfortable, I felt the same way, like in that course, where it's just like, that's how I grade Vitor Roque, on his own curve. He was never supposed to come here to the summer. He's coming in January. So I don't think, or I can't expect at any moment in these months that Vitor Roque will solve problems. The only counter argument that I'm willing to hear is that, very much like every team, there are surprises. Surprises pop up, and guys give you more than you thought you were going to get. And like, I actually don't say Lamine Yamal and Kubarsi in that category. Again, like, I've heard these names since they were 13 even. Like, they've been one of the best in their classes. But there are Fermin Lopez's that exist. Like, he is actually the example where he has given you so much more, and he's a first team player, and you never expected that name at all. Like, oh, I didn't, right? Like, he just was kind of like, all right, he'll be leaving La Masia, whatever. So for Fermin Lopez, that's the counter argument, but that's not what Vitor Roque is. Like, Vitor Roque is a known commodity that's coming in and just has to get acclimated to the team and to the style and to everything that's happening around him. So I'm not expecting to see him in those moments. And if he is there and does something, great, but I'm not going to blame Xavi for not, putting him in a class with business majors, because he hasn't read any. It's all equations. It doesn't make any sense to him yet.
I would have liked for him to be on the pitch, even like instead of Joao Felix. But what I always I want to see from a manager, it's, you're leaving, the ship is quote unquote going down. At least go down with your identity. If you don't believe, like, I would have loved to see Vitor Roque, but if Xavi doesn't believe in Vitor Roque, then I understand him not playing in that situation. So at the end of the day, obviously this has a prescription date, like it's gonna end. So die your way. That's what I want to get at. So I wanted to see Vitor Roque, but at the same time, I respect Xavi in that aspect, that, hey, whether it ends up working or not, you're gonna die your way, and that's it. That's the only thing I can ask from a coach. Like, go down your way. Don't go down and then be like, oh my God, like I wasn't me, like I was afraid. Like, no, if you're gonna fail your way, not somebody else's. So,
I mean, I think that's why he starts Lamine Yamal every day, because he doesn't, not saying that Xavi doesn't have to care about, like, he's a Kool-Aid, so obviously he doesn't want to burn Lamine Yamal into the ground, but it really is like, if Lamine Yamal has a bit role in the Euros, you know what I mean? Or like doesn't go to the Olympics, which maybe he shouldn't, and Spain just have other players, then
there's no Olympics,
right, exactly. So like, yeah, Lamine Yamal could very well be burnt out, but Xavi's even fighting for his job from week to week, because if he were to, you know what I mean? Like, if he drops
of course
4 and they lose to Napoli at Montjuic, like, what's stopping him from being let go at the end of March? And you know what I mean? Like, but obviously Oscar Hernandez, his assistant, wouldn't become the manager in his stead. They would find somebody else. But anyway, so I think we had some good points here. We got to tell some fun stories. I told really boring stories, but you get the point. The education system in America is something that there are wins and there are losses. I think that's a lesson learned from today. But Rafa, obviously you've got your own stuff going on, Aldamuy Football, which you can find down in the show notes, of course. And I do find that, of course, with your channel, you might have to start doing like pregame stuff the day before now too, because if DeYoung is going to pop off like that every time, or if somebody like if the Barca players got something to pop off about, then you might need to up it to the pregame before the day before.
I wasn't able to go live after yesterday's game because there was a upfront thing that I had to go to. But yeah, and then also like follow me on Instagram, although that's obviously more like Puerto Rican football, like bunch of different things. And then I just want to make this clear. If you see some Real Madrid stuff, it's because there's a Puerto Rican playing for Real Madrid Castilla called Jeremy De Leon. So it's because of that. Like, obviously, I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm sorry. Like, Puerto Rico comes first. Like, and not say I'm going to become a Real Madrid fan, but obviously I'm keeping up for whatever Jeremy does. So I just wanted to make that clear. If you see some Real Madrid content, it's because Jeremy De Leon from Puerto Rico, born and raised, plays for them. So that's it. Don't shoot me, please.
Fortunately, Barcelona have tapped into the American market and not Real Madrid. So I've always been with that. That's been great. All right. Yep. So follow him at Aldamuy Football. A game in a few days, but Barcelona have a little bit to lick their wounds now, and hopefully they continue to just play better in the Liga, and maybe you'll get some results there as well. So you can also follow me at HiltonD13 on Twitter. If you're one of the few people that does me, or X, whatever you want to call it, I'm like 15 people away from 2,000. So before the website goes down, I just want to hit 2,000. Instagram as well, and then Patreon, the Barcelona Podcast. That's how you help directly support the show, as well as the merch store. That's actually the easier way, and you get something out of it. So directly support the show, the merch store, and then, of course, a good rating on the podcast apps, following on the YouTube channel. This week now, as in next weekend, generally I have planned for you the history stuff that I was working on with Rob. So you already know who the collaborator is, but I didn't tell you what the thing is. So that is planned maybe for this week. So if you don't hear from me throughout this week, it's because we're hard at work on that. So expect that at the end of next week. So that's a little programming note for you. But most importantly, thanks so much for listening to the show. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon.